Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, here on the Friday evening edition of the Yard, much later than I wanted to be, but it's been a busy day. It has been one of those days that, you laid a plan out. Next thing you know, you get things that pop up and you got to work through it. But here we are. And I know many of you listen to the show on the weekend, so here we are. And tomorrow, basically all I'm going to do is go to football media opportunity. Tomorrow night is the first scrimmage. Players seem to be ready to go. Get out there and play real football, not just some team drills, but get out there and kind of work through a real scrimmage opportunity. We'll speak with coordinators tomorrow, and you can find that content for free over at genespage.com. I was just counting. We've already got like 9 articles for the day. I don't know what your local paper has done today, but we've done 9 articles today on a variety of topics. Most of that football coverage, and I'll run it down for you real quick because this article will be the 10th of the day for us. But kind of got it all started with Mike Nemo's notes, and then Robbie Falk with the 100-day Bulldog countdown, 22 days. That's right, with Nathan Pickering and Simeon Rice. Then Paul Jones comes back with a VIP piece, 3 things I know, 3 things I think I know. Q&A with Nick Mitchell, backup linebacker at Mississippi State. The training camp day 7 depth chart, that's a free piece. Chad Bumpus interview. Hey, go be dangerous. Bumpus tells Bulldog wideouts, as penned by our David Murray. Then I had a piece, one-on-one interview with Coach Chris Simonis about Mississippi State's portal haul. He kind of breaks down each player and kind of how it all came to be. Then we've got a video interview with former Penn State running back Kevon Lee. I think he's going to be an interesting piece for us. And then most recent piece is the Friday Notebook, penned by Dave Murray. So a lot of things today to read about, to watch. If you're looking for your fill of Mississippi State sports coverage, you can find it over at genespage.com. Got an army of people working hard to do a great job for you. In addition to that, you'll have this show. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll try to replicate that. Tomorrow I'll also have a Deshaun Page feature that will run for free over at Gene's Page. I'll get up, get moving around, get the dogs going, and we'll do that. Then we'll have our breakdown with our coordinators as they preview the scrimmage. There'll be a whole lot of that what are you expecting type question. What are you looking for? There'll be a lot of that as we preview that. And then we'll have an opportunity on Sunday to speak with Coach Zach Arnett after a bit of a abbreviated practice on Sunday evening as they kind of clean up a few things from the scrimmage, just to kind of get his reaction of where things happened in the stadium and kind of where we are. So just to kind of let you know what's going on in the world of Mississippi State football for this weekend. And then we'll get ready to do it all again. We're not going to have too many more viewing opportunities, to get, ideas of where everybody's sitting depth chart-wise and things like that. That's all going to wind down a little bit. We'll start getting into the business of football now because, 3 weeks from tomorrow, we're going to open with Southeastern Louisiana. Excited about that, like all of you are. Also, just around 200 season tickets remain available. Getting down to the nitty-gritty, if you're on the fence, please go ahead and take the plunge. Be a caretaker of this era of Mississippi State football. It's going to be a big year. And it's one of those things, too, that I'm so happy to see that our fans are getting behind this new staff, getting behind Zach Arnett. It's like, you know what, hey, I didn't buy season tickets last year, maybe not the year before. Maybe you couldn't in 2020. They limited capacity. But you're like, you know what? I'm going to throw my support behind Zach Arnett. That's a wonderful thing. And how cool will it be, and I think it's just a matter of days now before they make the announcement that all available season tickets for Mississippi State football have been sold. It won't be a school record. As you guys know, we did kind of reduce capacity. We talked about that on the show recently. We put the balconies in. That took capacity down just a little bit. So the 2015 school record is safe until we expand the stadium. But regardless of that, congratulations to all of you. I've already started seeing some of the Facebook and social media postings about your tickets coming in. Let me remind you, as always, do not tweet out or post your barcodes because somebody can steal your tickets. So don't do that. I know you're excited. Look what came today. That's super cool. Don't post your barcodes. Don't do it. There's some pirate out there that's going to take it. Not the good pirate like Mike Leach, but there's always somebody out there trying to, they'll take your tickets and then turn that into a selling opportunity for themselves, and they'll sell your tickets to somebody else, and then you'll show up on game day all excited, all decked out in your maroon and white, and you're not going to be able to gain entry into the complex because of the fact your ticket's already been used because you posted the barcode. Don't do it. I'm just telling you, I'm being your friend here. Don't do it. Lots to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit about the freshman newcomers. Had a lot of reaction. A lot of people reached out about the transfer guys, about what we expected. I think some people were surprised. Some of those guys weren't quite as accomplished as maybe they thought. Because a lot of times we're ranking these guys based off high school rankings, and then they haven't had a chance to really get on the field and prove and show what they can do. So it's an inexact science, to say the least. But today we're going to talk about which freshmen. I'm going to run through the freshmen and who we expect to play this year. That's always a big question. What freshmen can make an impact this year? I'm going to break it down for you today. I had a chance to watch a lot of these guys in high school, more to the point, saw their film. And now we've had a chance to kind of see them in practice, to kind of see how they're acclimating to life on the college level. And so I'll share with you my thoughts through 2 weeks of practice, who I expect to make a contribution this year. We'll also talk about South Carolina. That's a Bulldog opponent. We'll talk about them. We'll touch on a little bit what Chris Simonis had to say today about the portal. But again, this is mainly a football show and a pretty special top 10 for me as we commemorate the moment, the day that we lost one of the best song and dance men of the 1980s on the rock side. So we're going to talk about that today. But we'll get back next week. Kind of give you a programming note, too. I told you guys I thought we'd be on schedule. I didn't realize I was going to be traveling as much as I have been. It's been a busy stretch. I was in Knoxville, got home, went to Hattiesburg, came back the next day. Wife was home for a couple days. She's now back in Knoxville. And then I'll be back in Knoxville. And then we'll both be back here. So there's a lot of moving around. And that's even passing on some other trips. I got people all the time that are like, hey, we hadn't seen you guys in forever. Will you head to the coast? Well, we'd love to if I could find the time to do it. I told Dana earlier, I said, some days I walk around and I feel totally exhausted. And that's just me being totally honest with you. And I'm like, man, why am I so tired? I don't understand. Well, I wrote a book this summer, starting a business. And in addition to all that, trying to do the day job too, navigating through some stuff with all that stuff. I mean, I'm looking forward to things settling at the end of this month, and we're starting to get there, obviously. And just kind of focus on the Jeans Page gig, right? Gonna have a big announcement too about a promotion we're gonna do on this podcast. No purchase required. You don't have to be a subscriber to anything. You could just be a listener. And we're going to do that in the coming days. And it's going to give you a chance to win some cool stuff absolutely free. That's it. I'm going to post some questions on this show. And then you're going to tweet me or message me your answers. And then I'm going to pick winners at random out of the correct entries, and we're going to give you a chance to win some cool stuff just by listening to the show. Now, it's not going to be easy. I'm going to just tell you it now. It's not going to be easy, and you don't have to get all 10 questions correct. But you got to get enough correct. Like if you get 8 correct and 10 people get all 10 correct, well, then thanks for playing. So we'll share the details of that very soon. So something cool just by being a listener to this show. And then answering these questions, you got a chance to win something, and it's not something insignificant. I'm not going to send you a T-shirt, unless you want one. I probably got a couple Rock Vegas shirts still hanging around here. I could send you one of those, but what we're going to offer is baseball related, and let's just say it's not cheap. Not cheap. But I'll have more details on that soon. And again, I get people every day hitting me up about this new business my wife and I are opening. We are finalizing the lease now. That's a very long process. And I'll be honest with you, if I never have to do that again, it'll be too soon. Honest to goodness. So happy to get that resolved. And, got my lawyer reviewing some documents now. Casey Lott is my lawyer and has been for several years. And if you are in need of legal representation, I encourage you to give Casey Lott. That is an unpaid advertisement and endorsement. Casey is my friend, and I got to know him by hiring him. And we had lunch in Starkville. And there are a lot of times, too, I'll have questions. And I say, hey, man, I want to make sure I don't run afoul of anything. But I got Casey reviewing some documents for me this weekend. We'll finalize a lease. Finally have that close. And met today at the space and met with the contractor. So, we're close to finalizing some things where I can just kind of hand control of this over to some other people. Here's the keys to the building. There are a few things I got to do to get it ready for us. And so we're still hopeful to have it open by the end of the year. That's what I want. I can promise you. That's exactly what I want if I got to get in there and swing hammers myself. Happy to have this coming, but not just because of the fact that, hey, Dana and I will be able to have a regular life 24/7, like many of you. That's an underappreciated part of marriage for those of you that don't understand that. Being able to wake up with and go to bed each night with your significant other is something that is very good for my mental health. I'm sure it is for you guys too. I hate being away from her. I do. There were times you're like, well, it'd be okay. Now, after as much time as I've been away, it has not been good. But all that said, we'll have that for you soon. And one of the coolest things about this, I'm just ready for you all to be able to experience this. If that sounds right. It's not just about, hey, we're going to open a business, we want it to be successful. And that's true. And I would feel that way if I was opening another Mexican restaurant, if I was opening up a sandwich place, if I was opening up a taco truck. We want to be successful. But also, when we got ready to pick out a business, I thought I want to do something that is super cool, nobody else has, be a unique experience, and also be very beneficial to the residents and visitors of Starkville, Mississippi. I'm going to be there a lot. I'm not just going to be working from home. Why would I work from home when I can go down there and work in the office down there and be around her all the time, right? It's part of the deal. But I'm going to be there a lot, and I'm ready to kind of see you guys when you have a chance to go float in our float therapy spa, to see your reaction when you come out, to see the benefits in your life. And so we're going to be talking about that a lot, as we get closer. But a lot going on, and your good friend and host is ready to kind of take some things off my plate and put them onto somebody else, because football season is about to be here, and I want to be completely focused on Mississippi State football. And that's what you guys want too. I think it's going to be a great year. But it's been an extremely busy summer for me. So, again, next week, we'll do our regular scheduled show Monday. We'll do our regular scheduled show Wednesday. Your Friday show will actually come to you on Saturday. Unless I just decide to bring this stuff with me. And I may do that. But I'll apprise you of that on Wednesday, because Wednesday's a travel day for me after the show. So I'll let you know next week to expect a show Friday or Saturday. I may be able to pull it off on Friday, but I'll let you know. Let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company. Speaking of people always pulling it off, that's Bulldog Burger Company. I love Bulldog Burger Company, man, I do. I love the fact that they're adding some cool things like the tap takeovers. We've advertised a few of those for them, and there's also live music events there in Tupelo. Man, so many other places you could go eat, but why would you bother? Honestly, when you want to sit down and have a great meal, put your feet under a table that's been cleaned, to be served by somebody that cares that you're there, have your food prepared by people that want you to come back. Service is such a rare thing these days, and it's a shame. We talk about all the things that are wrong in society. Recently I had a bad service experience. It was just no fault of my own, and all of a sudden they treat me like I've got some sense of entitlement to expect to get what I pay for. I've never been treated that way at Bulldog Burger Company because they just wouldn't allow it. That's just not who they are, what they're about. You're going to get quality service. You're going to get a quality meal. You're going to get it at a great price. There's no better place to dine in Starkville, Mississippi the Bulldog Burger Company. You can add that great location in Tupelo on Gloucester Street, in Lake Harbor Drive in Ridge and Flowwood area. I mean, yeah, you could go a lot of places, but why bother? Go get the spring rolls for your appetizer. They'll make you and everybody around you better looking. Get the chocolate shake to go. Get the bread pudding. Enjoy yourself. Bulldog Burger Company, what a great place to eat, a great place to work, a great place to have an adult beverage. They've got you covered all the way around. Go check them out today. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. M-E-A-T. All right, let's talk about these freshman football players. It's a good class. It is a good class. Is it a great class? I don't know. You know, composite rank now is 37. And, it was top 25 on signing day, but there's been some changes. I mean, there always is. It all ebb and flow. And I think for a program like State, as long as we can stay in the top 30, we're going to be good. And every so often, it seems like we have that one class that just, things don't work out or whatever. But I like this class. I do. And so we're going to start with the highest rated player in the class and the guy that I expect to have an immediate impact. I don't think he starts this year. I think he plays a lot. I think in year 2, he probably is a starter. We're talking wide receiver Creed Whittemore. At FW Buckholz High School in Gainesville, Florida. Got to give Steve Spurrier Jr. a lot of credit here. Steve has a relationship with the dad, who was also a coach there in the high school ranks. His older brother went to the University of Florida. There was some discussion about possibly having him transfer here. He ends up going to UCF. State never pushed for a commitment. But here's the deal. Creed's a guy, too, that you can run some gadget plays with because he was a high school quarterback. And with all the motion and misdirection and counters and things that we do, you're going to lose track of people and you're going to stress the defense. And you got a guy like Creed that's more than just a ball carrier and a pass catcher. You better be mindful of 85. Because you know what? He may just pull that ball up and sling it down the field. He's got the arm to do it. I fully expect Creed Whittemore to be in some gadget plays during his career here at Mississippi State. I do. I do expect him to play a lot. I've been very impressed. And the son of a coach, you expect to kind of do the little things, right? Because it's been stressed to him their whole life. He's not just getting by on athleticism. This guy has an extremely high football IQ. I saw recently, I guess it was 247 Sports, mentioned Creed Whittemore as the freshman most likely to make an impact. I completely agree. Completely. Number 2 guy. Also, the second highest rated guy. We'll just go rankings all the way down. It's Isaac Smith. I touched on him on the Wednesday show. I love him. I love his ability, love his length, love the fact that he's going to get out there and make some big plays. Comes from a football family himself. His dad was a college football player, spent some time at Ole Miss. But Isaac Smith is that dude. As the kids say, he is Himothy. This is one of these guys that will absolutely get after you. He will hit you. He has great catch radius, really good foot speed, really great football instincts. I think he plays a lot this year. I think he's probably a starter next year. May work his way into the starting lineup this year just because of our needs at the position. Now, as of late, Jacoby Albert has come on, done a really good job. You know what you have in Sean Preston, Marcus Banks. I think that group is rounding into form. But I think Isaac Smith's also going to be a guy that's going to have to play a lot this year. And it's not just because of the fact it's an emergent need positionally. I think he's just simply that talented. So it's kind of the perfect storm of, hey, we have a need. We've got a young guy here that's also uber talented. I would venture to say, and this may hurt some feelings, and that's okay. I work a program of rigorous honesty. I think Isaac Smith has the highest upside of any safety on the roster. Period. Doesn't have the experience yet. Hadn't even cut his college wisdom teeth yet. But this is a guy here, I think, if you were going to go out and have this create a player type deal, it'd look a lot like Isaac Smith. And it's not just the physical attributes. This is a guy that kind of understands football. And so, yeah, he's going to play a good bit this year. And I think in the end, he's going to be a multi-year starter here at Mississippi State. So to expect him to play this year. The number 3 highest rated player in our class is Ty Jones. Now, Ty did take some time off this summer and returned to the team for second session of summer school. Ty, goodness gracious, this poor kid, man. He had multiple family members die within just a few weeks of each other. and just needed to go back home and get loved on a little bit. I mean, that's how we'd all be. He lost his mom and, some other people very close to him all in a quick succession. And so he took some time off and he went back home to Bay Springs. Some people wondered if he was going to leave the program. And we found out last month, 3 weeks ago now, that Ty was back. Got back going through drills. And the truth of the matter is, I'm sure that's what his family would want, right? It's like, yes, this has been a terrible, terrible situation. However, we got to start moving forward a little bit. But he took some time to grieve, and that's one of the most healthy things you can do in your life, to be quite honest with you. Learning to process pain in a healthy way. It's true. And I don't care if you're a person in recovery or not. Learning to take some time for yourself to process through those emotions is exceptionally, exceptionally important. And the sad part of it is Ty Jones is having to do it as a teenager. And so I know he needs to be around the guys. I'm glad he's back. Does he play a lot this year? Could be a special teams guy. But, that's the thing, too. This linebacker class that we signed, we got some dudes. And that's 3 classes in a row we've kind of stacked some backers. I think Ty Jones might have the best upside of any of those guys, to be quite honest with you. And I'm including some of the guys that are on your team that you know your name. You know their names already. Honestly, if Ty Jones continues to work hard and Ty Jones stays healthy, I think he'll be as productive, if not more productive, than Bookie Watson and Jet Johnson. I think he is that caliber of player. It's going to be how quickly can he pick up life and times in the SEC. That guy is really, really good. All right, the 4th highest rated player in the class, Bryce Pollock out of Shallow High School out in Snellville, Georgia. One time he was committed to University of Pittsburgh, and we knew that wasn't going to stick. We knew at some point he'd find a program closer to home. Give Darcel McBath a lot of credit. He is a guy that could be corner, could be safety. I think a lot of it's just going to depend on how he grows. You got to be quick twitch to play corner, but, as electric as offenses are these days, the days of just the plodding, hard-hitting safety are pretty much over. You've got to be athletic to play at any position in the defensive backfield, and Bryce is. I think he's probably a guy that'll redshirt this year just because of the fact we do have some older guys at corner, and we've got some guys at safety I think are moving along. But Bryce is one of these guys. We talk about putting our 5 best DBs on the field. There's going to come a time in a not-so-distant future Bryce is going to be one of those 5. All right, Jonathan Davis, you may recall, that was a big, big recruiting win for State late. I love, and I'm just going to say it for what it is. I've reached a point in my life, I'm tired of biting my tongue. I know that sounds kind of, I don't know, maybe a little bit weird considering how I've behaved on this microphone over the years. But there are some people that claim sources and they have bought into a revisionist history that there was never any drama with Jonathan Davis. And I'll just tell you this, you're either lying or completely misinformed. Mississippi State had to work extremely hard to beat Ole Miss for Jonathan Davis. That's a fact. That's not hyperbole. That's not a question. That's not speculation. That's a fact. Jonathan Davis, for all intents and purposes, privately committed to Ole Miss when he took a visit up there. It's true. It's true. He didn't have his parents with him. And, of course, he gets back home and things kind of get shaken up a little bit. And then there was no question at the end he was going to pick Mississippi State. But all these people are like, oh, well, no, this kid, no. It was never a slam dunk. Never a slam dunk. Mississippi State, Tony Hughes, Dave Turner, Zach Arnett, they had to work exceptionally hard. And I don't know why that's so difficult for some people to admit. It actually makes Mississippi State's coaching staff look better to beat Ole Miss for a player they really wanted than have these people come back later because they're searching for internet credibility. Oh, there was never any drama. You're completely wrong. You are completely wrong. Jonathan Davis is a dude, one of these guys that hit the radar late. I had people telling me about him all season long. I just didn't think we'd ever flex on him. We did. It's a big win for State. Does he play a lot this year? I don't know that he does. But I do think he'll see the field. And, of course, you got the 4-game redshirt rule you can work with. Yeah, I think he absolutely gets on the field. Dave Turner is really high on this kid. Dave Turner thinks Jonathan Davis has potential to be a really good one at Mississippi State. So I do expect him to play, but I would like to be able to preserve the red shirt. I think that's how we'd all feel. All right, Leon Bell, the last enrollee of the class, We got Kelly Jones and Freddie Roberson in, for that second session. Leon was still finishing up a course. He got it done. And Leon's here. And again, this is a guy, too, big time athletic offensive lineman. Mason Miller was kind of pivoted on him late. And you do some connections in Texas, found out about him there at Kilgore Junior College. And, of course, he's not a high school guy. Will he play some this year? I don't know how much he does. I think you want him to get out there and get his feet wet. I'd like to be able to redshirt him because this is a guy that's still very raw. But he's a freak of an athlete at 6'8", 330. And when you start looking at this group we've put together here, some imposing physical figures on this roster. And Leon Bell is a guy, too, that, it's just one of those things that's kind of out the blue late, and we get him, and then we get him into school. Now it's time to go to work. Eric Taylor, another junior college guy, former All-American, signed with LSU, wound up at Southwest Mississippi Community College. He's a dude. And, again, not a high school guy, but, yeah, he's absolutely going to play. Absolutely going to play. Chris Parson, seen some good things from him in practice. One of the things I like about Chris is how effortlessly he throws a football. There's some guys you can see they have to kind of ramp it up a little bit, and it's like takes all they have to kind of push it down the field. It's all very, very fluid for Chris. Even when he's kind of rolling and throwing without planting his feet, he's got the arm strength and really kind of that throwing pattern. Like when you watch his motion, he is a guy almost like a pitcher in many respects. We talk about like a repeatable delivery on the mound. That's kind of how Chris is. It's all very compact. It's very quick. He is a guy, too, that you can see when he rolls outside and those backers and safeties come up and try. If they commit too soon, Chris has got the arm strength to float that ball behind him or just ram it down the field. He is not the guy that you want to get caught in between with. I really like him. I think he's probably your starter in 2025. 2024. I think he's probably your starter next year after a redshirt year. And people are like, but Steve, I'm just telling you, when you look at the quarterback run element with him, it changes the dynamics of the offense. Now, could it be a situation next year where Mike Wright is the starter and Chris Parson is the understudy, kind of like we did with Dak, back in 12? Is that the way we go? Maybe it is. But I think Kevin Barbay would love to have that option. But I think Chris Parson is one of these guys that we're going to look back. Is going to elevate the profile of this program. Seth Davis, and I'll be honest with you, I think Seth Davis is a guy probably benefits from the schedule, the offensive change and philosophy more so than anybody of the young guys because Seth's the guy that's selling the play in the air raid. My concern with Seth always was, as at his diminutive stature, is he going to be able to stand in there and pass protect on a blitzing Mike linebacker that comes free? That worries me. It's not magic, it's math. It's physics. I think Seth in this offense, it's a much better fit for him. I think he kind of unduly benefits from this without really doing anything. He just signed and showed up. And then he gets here and all of a sudden we change to a philosophy that I think fits his skill set much better. I don't know how much he plays this year. I think that running back room is in really good shape. But, yeah, you'd like to be able to redshirt him, let him bulk up a little bit. But I think Seth is a guy that's going to be a guy to watch in the future. Kelly Jones, a corner out of Clarksdale, mentioned him getting here a little bit late. That probably sets him back a bit. But Kelly is a dude, man. You guys have listened to this show for a long time. You read the Gene Space Master Sports. I was kind of on him before anybody else was. I was on that bandwagon when all he had was junior college offers and people thought he was a non-qualifier. And he wasn't. And it took him a little while to get here, but he's here. Now that he's here, expecting big things. I don't think he plays much this year, though. Maybe get late in the game. Maybe, we'll see. But I think this is a redshirt guy for sure. Just because, number one, he's learning to play a new position. He could benefit from the redshirt year. And he's already a freak of an athlete. But what's he going to look like with 10 pounds of good weight on him? Zay Alexander, a guy that has really kind of transformed his body. And credit to him and that coaching staff at Tupelo. I think he's a guy, too, that will likely redshirt. But I do expect him to play some this year. You need to kind of get some film on him. And, again, another massive offensive lineman, 6'7", 315 pounds. Huge. I like the future of this group. Jeffrey Pittman, we get a lot of comments from players about Jeff Pittman. Another junior college guy, had a big play at the goal line the other day, ran through a tackle, put it in the end zone, ignited the entire offense. And maybe that's what he does. Maybe he's your short yardage back. Obviously Woody can do it too, but I like Jeff Pittman. He's certainly going to play a lot this year. And that's the thing you start running through is, okay, well, yeah, we got Kevon Lee, a transfer from Penn State. Yeah, he's going to play. We got Simeon Price back. We know he's going to play. And when you think about the fact that we're going to run the football a lot more this year, having 4 quality backs, I think is something that is kind of maybe understated by a lot of people that even cover Mississippi State. I don't think people realize how talented this backfield can be. Tobias Hinton's a linebacker. I don't expect him to play much this year. He's a guy, too, that kind of doubled as a rush end at times, didn't play a lot in space in high school until this past year. Tony Vance runs a great program at Hattiesburg High School. Anytime that we're recruiting a kid at Hattiesburg High School, I know they've been coached well. And there's a lot of programs around this state you look at and say, well, I don't know the caliber of coaching they've gotten there. I know the caliber of coaching that Tobias Hinton's had at Hattiesburg High School. And it's going to be up to him. It's going to be absolutely up to him because he's been coached well. He spent some time in the weight room. It was a good get for Mississippi State. Nakai Poole is a guy we've heard some good things about. Again, I don't expect him to play much this year, probably with redshirt, and that's completely fine. I think the wide receiver room that we have is good, and I think he's a guy that's going to play outside a lot. And learning to kind of play on the perimeter is going to be big. And I think watching Justin Robinson and those guys work this season will be good for him. But again, we've heard some remarks about him flashing some in practice. Jalen Abram, big fan of him. I don't know if he'd end up being a safety. That's one thing, watching him on film, as you look at him, he's kind of a bigger and beefier corner, and you think, okay, he's got the skill to do this, but how would he play with the ball in front of him? How is he going to play, like, if getting off that hash, right? I think he's capable, again, to give you some options. He's got some versatility. I think he's completely underrated by the networks, and I'm completely okay with that because I'm going to look back in a couple of years and say I told you so. Caleb Bryant's done some pretty cool things in practice too. In the position that we've been able to go watch when he has gotten in there, he definitely shows up. And again, I think he's probably a 4-game guy. Really the same for Gabriel Moore. I think Gabe Moore is a freak of an athlete, and the fact that he's rated an 87 is criminal, to be quite honest with you. Amari Smith, another massive lineman at 6'7", 295. You'd like to be able to redshirt him too. And I think with all the veterans we have this year, I would venture to say that every high school offensive lineman we have in this class will redshirt, and they should. Jacoby Belazar, had somebody pull me aside the other day and said, you know what, Jacoby Belazar might be the hidden weapon in this Mississippi State offense because he can really run. And somebody mentioned the possibility of having him in one slot and Tulu in the other, or having them lined up both in a bunch formation because both of them are so fleet of foot and so shifty that all of a sudden when you get out there and you're thinking, okay, you got to watch 5, you got to watch Tulu, they're going to feed him, and then there's Belazar in man coverage. We'll see. Luke Evans, they love this kid out of Chaminade Madonna Prep in Hollywood, Florida. They absolutely love this guy. He is a guy we think is the next great Bulldog corner, like the next generation. We've got some guys ahead of him, obviously, but I can tell you there are people within the program that think this guy has NFL potential. He's got to work hard. Don't think he'll play much this year, but certainly in the future. Mentioned, again, Jaden Hobson, Malik Ellis, both offensive linemen. Malik needs to gain some mass. He's done a little bit, but needs to get a little bit bigger. Jaden Hobson out there at Hillcrest, I would assume people tell me that he might be the biggest hidden gem in the state of Alabama from last year's class. Really happy to have him. Joseph Head, he's a freak, and again, the fact that he's rated where he is, I think, is a joke. I think Joseph Head's a guy that'll thrive in the Zach Arnett scheme. Do we see him this year? I think we may, to be quite honest with you. I think we may. We had the late addition of Will James from Theodore High School, a guy that, again, I think will redshirt. And you think, Steve, we're talking about these redshirt guys. Guys, I'm going to be honest with you. The lowest rated high school recruit in our class is probably going to play this year. That's Zachary Tillman. Former safety, ate his way into being a linebacker, a freak of an athlete. And we talked to backers today, and his name keeps coming up. Zachary Tillman, this. Deshaun Page said that Zachary Tillman has some of the innate ability to play linebacker that even some of our seniors don't have. Just a natural athlete. I loved him from the very beginning, the very first time I watched this film. I loved the kid. I said, you know what? Why didn't this kid have all these offers? And it was because he's a bit of a tweener, right? But the reality of it is, this is a steal for Mississippi State. This is one of these guys, too, you look at, it's like you look back, well, you had Bernardrick McKinney. I'm not going to sit here and say that Zachary Tillman's going to have the same career that BMAC did. But this is another one of these under-recruited kids kind of tucked away in Mississippi that people are like, well, okay, we'll see. No, Zachary Tillman is a dude. And provided he can stay healthy, he's going to prove that. And I don't know what you guys are going to call him, what his nickname is going to be, but he's going to be a fan favorite. An extremely intelligent young man that's also just happens to be an extremely athletic guy. And again, kind of grew his way into the linebacker position, but you better believe Zachary Tillman is going to be a name that moving forward, provided he stays healthy. He is. And so it's like you go through all these guys, like, oh, well, yeah, we expect the four-star kids to play, Steve. And, yeah, I mean, that's right. They're on these offers. Guys, Zachary Tillman had none of that stuff. Had a bunch of people just kind of sniff at him and like, we'll see. Zachary Tillman, this is one of those ones I'm going to look back and say, I told you so. And I'm already beginning to say it. Because we continue to hear from people who really have no agenda whatsoever. I mean, what have they gained by telling us Zachary Tillman's look good in practice? I mean, it's not like they're trying to sell you anything. It's like we ask them, who are some of the younger guys that have stood out? This is a guy who is consistently mentioned. And I think he's going to have an opportunity to play this year. And when you begin to think about what's best for the health of our program, and listen, we've recruited linebackers really well in recent years. But when you begin to think about what we're potentially losing, it might be smart to get Zachary out there now, let him take some lumps here as a freshman because he may be in a position to start next year. And, of course, Keelan Crimmins, from Australia, those punters never get ranked correctly. But this Keelan Crimmins kid, 6'3", 200 pounds, and that's legit. And so I'm eager to see what he does, how special teams changes. But, so there's probably a half dozen of these guys that I think will play this year. But the guy that's going to flash that nobody's talking about, that we're going to look back and say, you know what, we knew something y'all didn't, is Zachary Tillman. Take it to the bank, borrow money against it. That's exactly how confident I am in it. Again, provided he stays healthy, he is going to be a dude. And I'm going to be really, really big in that fan club because he is an excellent young man. And I can tell you this, when he committed to Mississippi State, it wasn't just him, it was his entire family. They all committed to Mississippi State. That's why there was no wiggle room late. But to be fair, there wasn't a lot of people pushing him to flip. I think people just kind of labeled him a tweener and said, well, you know what, I don't know if he's got the foot speed to play safety. Does he have the bulk to play linebacker? Well, by the time signing they got here, he did. He just kept growing. And now all of a sudden he's learned to play at a new weight, and he's at a Southeastern Conference practice in the first few days of PAS, and instead of being intimidated, he's earning respect from his teammates. So go ahead and prepare. Zachary Tillman. All right, time for today's Top 10 list. As always, brought to you by closewithblair.com. That's C-L-O-S-E with Blair, B-L-A-I-R.com. The Blair stands for Blair Chandler, who is my friend, your friend, a friend of those in need. A friend of those that have mortgage concerns. Maybe you're trying to get into a mortgage. Maybe that's proven to be very difficult for you. Part of the problem might be you've entrusted that service to the wrong individual. That's why you need to go work with Blair. Top 1% close ratio in the country back-to-back years. Works at Fairway Mortgage, a very reputable mortgage lender. They know how to get things done and do it in an expedient and efficient way. Also, Blair can tell you all about this new program in the state of Mississippi where now an 18-year-old can sign a mortgage document provided they have a cosigner. Opens up some interesting options for you. Maybe perhaps you want to let your young person get a head start in life. Maybe rather than renting an apartment, you can buy a condo or a property. Turn it into an investment down the road whenever your young person graduates college. Maybe you sell it, recoup some of your investment. A lot to it. Blair can help you navigate through that. reach out to him at 601-500-2344. Again, 601-500-2344. And be sure you let him know you heard about him on the Boneyard. All right, top 10. Today is August 11th. It's a sad day for me. It's a sad day for many people in the rock community, for sure. Jani Lane, talked about him on the show many times before. Jani passed away a dozen years ago today at the age of 47. It's a shame. And I've shared with you some of my interactions with Jani Lane. I'll tell you, one of the last times I saw him, he was not the pretty boy that you know from the Cherry Pie video. He was suffering with alcohol bloat and things like that, and his career was rather interesting. You know, he started a band as a drummer and then formed a band called Plain Jane. They moved to Florida, packed up and moved to California, and were committed to getting a record deal. And while they were out there, they began to create a little bit of a buzz and ultimately joined the band Warrant. Stephen Sweet, the drummer, and Jani both joined Warrant, and Jani wrote most of their hits. And he died 12 years ago today of alcohol poisoning at the Beverly Hills Best Western. Not going to get into that whole story again, but we're going to celebrate his music today. Not everything on the list is Warrant related. Some of this was solo stuff, so it's not a Warrant list, it's a Jani Lane list. I also did not include any songs from his one released solo album, Back Down to One. And the graphic artist that designed that album cover has basically 4 chalk outlines around the legs of Jani Lane, like that everybody's dead to him in his former band. So it didn't always work out, but it was kind of an on-again, off-again relationship with Jani and Warrant, and much of that had to do, you know, with his alcoholism. And so today, 10 tracks, and again, nothing off Back Down to One. But some of these are guest spots. Some of these are some of the hits from Warrant. The one song that you're not going to hear today on the list is Cherry Pie. And you say, but Steve, how could we do a list? Well, out of respect for Jani, you know, he was a guy that got a little bit overexposed and kind of wrote that song, you know, just kind of off the cuff. You know, wasn't anything he really had his heart in. And there were things that he was always upset with, and he kind of hated being labeled a Cherry Pie guy. He thought there was more to his catalog than that, and he's right. But what's interesting is after the album Dog Eat Dog came out, things began to change for Warrant, and a lot of it because, you know, Jani wanted to ensure he still had a playing career. And so the album Ultraphobic came out, and it was kind of a departure from the glam metal era, a little more of the alternative rock thing, not necessarily grunge, but you could hear some of the tuning there. And then Belly to Belly came out, Under the Influence. That's the final album with Jani Lane. Born Again, they had a new singer, and then, of course, Robert Evans has sung on Rockaholic and Louder, Harder, Faster. But 6 albums for Jani with the band Warrant, and we're going to pull some from that. From number 10 on your list, again, kind of looking at all this stuff, it's crazy to go back. Under the Influence was basically a cover album, and that was released back in 2001. And it was the final album with Jani Lane. There were 2 original songs on this album. We're going to go with the song Face, which is the last track on the album. If you're unfamiliar with this album and you like cover songs, and I do, some good ones on here. You know, some Aerosmith stuff, Tin Lizzy, and even did Dead Jail Rock and Roll by Michael Monroe. For you hairband fanatics, that's a great one. And Hair the Dog from Nazareth, of course. But there are a lot of cool ones on here. But Face, a song written by Jani and Carrie Kelly, closes out the album. That's number 10 for you. All right, the next album, because we're going to work backwards. We're going to work from album 6 and kind of work our way towards the front here. So on track number 9 on the album Belly to Belly, and you kind of have an idea of, you know, what this album was kind of built around. But again, it's much like, again, it's not glam metal. So when you listen to this, you're going to like, hey, well, things really changed. I kind of lost track of Warrant. Well, that's one of the reasons why. I think it was a very, very interesting career choice that in many respects maybe brought an end to Warrant as we knew them. Now they're back now being a nostalgia act, and they're not changing with the times. But that's kind of what happened here. I think Janie, after Doggy Dog came out, and it was still good. It was a top 25 album on the Billboard charts. And but I think he said, you know what, music is changing, we have to change too. And I think Janie and Warrant became something they really weren't, if that makes sense to you. All For You is the track off the Belly to Belly album we're going to go with. All For You. And they had a couple of songs on there that were interesting. There was one called Letter to a Friend that Janie wrote about how your relationship should end. Like we both kind of see it for what it is. And I still want to keep you as a friend. This isn't working out, so we'll move on. But that's just not how life works, Janie. Usually if things don't end badly, they generally don't end. Period. All right, Ultraphobic. This was the first album with the new sound of Warrant. You know, it was much, much different. And it was a darker time in Janie's life. Him and Bobby Brown had divorced after being together for a few years. But it was over. And Janie even kind of said in some interviews that one of the reasons that things changed from Doggy Dog to Ultraphobic is because of the fact that he wanted to continue to do some big things. And there's some Alice in Chains type stuff in this, which I like a couple of these songs. They really kind of lost me on this album, to be honest with you. I was like, you know what? It just seems weird. You know, it's like, your friends from church all of a sudden meet you at the bar. You know, it just didn't fit for me. But the track Undertow is your number 8 track. Undertow off the album Ultraphobic, which was the fourth album of the Janie Lane Experience with Warrant. All right, number 7, and this is a great one here. I really dig this one. It's not a Warrant song. And Bobby Blotzer from Rat is on this album. You may know it, maybe you don't, but it's a group called Saints of the Underground. Saints of the Underground. And it's kind of like in the middle of all of this. You hear some elements of the music of the time, but you also hear some things that are more traditional rock and roll. And I went with the great track off that album, Tomorrow Never Comes. That's not a Garth Brooks cover. It's an original track, Tomorrow Never Comes, from Saints of the Underground, featuring Janie Lane on vocals. Number 6, ironically, a song entitled Addiction, from the Christian rock group Liberty and Justice. I think they're making their top 10 debut with us here. Liberty and Justice. Janie actually recorded a couple tracks with this outfit, and I had read that Janie was trying to get his life together, right? So he was trying to surround himself with more positive people, and had a connection with this band and agreed to do some songs. And he was getting fed himself, right? But Addiction, number 6. So now we're going to get into kind of the traditional stuff here. And I like it not to just go with hits, even though they are hits. They're not true B-sides. But I didn't go with all the traditional ones. Number 5 for me, the lead single off of that Doggy Dog album, the last of the Warrant hair metal run with Janie, is Machine Gun. I absolutely love it. I still rock it in the car. It's one of these things that, I put it on and it's like the early 90s all over again. And again, Doggy Dog came out in 92, and that's around the time things were changing. You know, Cherry Pie comes out the end of 90, and by the time they recorded another album and got off the road, the world was kind of changing around them. But Machine Gun was legit. Number 4, a song that Janie Lane told me he thought was one of his best ones, is The Bitter Pill. I still listen to this one too, and it always kind of makes me sad. When I'm feeling somewhat nostalgic, I listen to this song. And it's a shame. I think more of you were kind of robbed of this experience because of the fact that MTV was too big for their britches in many respects. You know, it's like, hey, we're going to change this. And Stephen Sweet and Jerry Dixon and others really appealed to MTV and others. Will you please play our video? and they wouldn't do it because they were intent on changing things. And there were a lot of people that were executives at MTV, and to their credit, there was some truth to this. It was time for music to change, and I don't think it was changing rapidly enough for them. I think that's one of the things that happens. It works organically. And so it had gotten bloated and kind of cookie cutter, and people were like, I don't want anything to do with hair metal. And so we're going to go grab a bunch of guys that just finished up a night shift at Subway, and we're going to put them on stage and put guitars in their hand, and it doesn't matter if they can sing or they can play. We're going to make something else happen. And they force-fed us that. And then the reason that I say that, and listen, I loved grunge. I did. But it didn't have staying power. And if you listen to music today, rock music of today, there are more elements of 80s rock than there are of grunge. And so that's the thing when you look at that, like what built upon that? Where did grunge carry us? Well, grunge carried us into a very awkward time in rock and roll music. And there are a lot of people, like there's no staying power with any of that stuff. And, many of the bands in the grunge era are legendary. Absolutely legendary. But the elements of that were kind of confined to that time of music. It's a much different deal. And to be honest with you, and I've said this on the show before, I don't blame grunge for killing off hair metal. I blame hair metal for killing off hair metal. And not because of Jani Lane and Warrant and people like that actually had talent. It's the record companies out here that were looking for the single, right? Let's go out here and push this banger out here and we'll do a power ballad. And what happened is there were so many bands getting signed that all got watered down. And needed something fresh to happen. And ironically, it was Guns N' Roses that took Soundgarden out on a nationwide tour that really exposed grunge to the rest of the country. Little known fact there. You didn't expect to learn that today, but it's true. On the Use Your Illusion tour, Axl Rose was such a huge fan of Chris Cornell that he basically demanded that Soundgarden be the opening act on so many of those shows. And so Soundgarden goes from kind of being a regional band to a nationwide phenomenon. And to this day, I submit to you, Soundgarden does not get enough credit, even though they were the superior band from Seattle. And I'll down that hill. But number 3, off the Cherry Pie album. And again, we didn't go with Cherry Pie, but I wanted to push one of my own favorites in here. It's the great song Blind Faith. And I still listen to this song too. And every time I do, it reminds me of my beautiful bride. And, I get a little melancholy at times. And I put it on. I probably should put on something a little more, rocking so I don't embrace those feelings. But I'm the kind of person that, for years, I didn't feel anything. When I was in addiction, I didn't feel anything. And then even when I got sober for a while, I still tried to block all that stuff out. I just didn't feel it. And it's good to feel. It really is. And I think in order to really embrace happiness, sometimes you got to work through the sadness in your life and let your body and mind and heart feel those things. But Blind Faith is one of those songs, even all these years later, still gets to me. Number 2, I don't think any list with Jani Lane or Warrant or really anything with late 80s rock would be complete without this great track. It's a great story about the protagonist and Uncle Tom. It's Uncle Tom's Cabin. We heard it played live for the first time ever in Jackson, Mississippi. We did. All of us were there together. It was Trickster, Warrant, and Firehouse. It was a great show. We got to hear Uncle Tom's Cabin played live before it was released, and we all lost our minds, and we couldn't wait to go buy the album. Absolutely phenomenal. And number 1 for me, the song that started it all, and of course I bear the tattoo. I have a Cherry Pie tattoo as well, but it's Down Boys. And again, I share with you guys for a while. I've got that on my knuckles, but I just wanted to be able to today, let's take a moment and appreciate the great music that Jani Lane has offered us through his career. And he is on so many guest spots. He's done, like he even covered Panama on a Van Halen tribute album. There's just so many things that he was a part of. And he was really kind of an iconic figure, but he was also a bit of a tragic hero. And a lot of the things that kind of made him great are the things that ultimately destroyed him. And it's one of those things that it really, really gets to you a little bit, because you think about This is a guy too that maybe with the right management and the right mentorship, things could have been different for him. And I think in the end, he just simply could not accept the fact that the ride was ending, and wasn't prepared to pivot. And you hate it for him, you hate it for the family, but we're still going to celebrate Jenny Lane on this show. And I appreciate so many of you Warren and Jenny Laney fans that when we talk about him, you reach out and say, you know what, Steve, I always like it because it reminds me of a simpler time in life. And so, yeah, we could focus on Jenny's untimely death, but I think it's more important to focus on the life he lived and the music and art he created for us to enjoy. So there you go, your top 10 list. If you have ideas for the top 10 list, reach out and let us know. Best way to do that is to find Roy on Twitter at Dogmatic67. That's DAWGMATIC 67. He's also on Spotify with that same handle. You get our great list right there. You can subscribe to them. In addition to that, you can find me on all forms of social media at Scout Steve R. If you got ideas, reach out, let us know. I got hit up this week, 4 or 5 different people looking for lists. It's like, Steve, I know you guys have done a Sticks list. I know that you have done a Bad Company list. And it means a lot to me that you care enough, that you want to know what I think. But I'm just here to help celebrate some tunes, man, in addition to talking about sports. And so I'm glad that you guys dig the show. I know some of you guys are not music people, so you skip this segment of the show. I think that's unfortunate, but nevertheless, thanks for listening to the Top 10 list. All right, final segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart. I love Campus Bookmart. And don't forget, August the 15th at noon, going to be the official unveiling of the brand new Vintage Vault logo for this year. Many of you probably know what it is. I can't say officially, but Mississippi State Trademark and Licensing will be on hand, and you're going to be able to buy that merchandise for the first time in a long time. And it's going to be great. And I love the fact that they're doing this Vintage Vault stuff and bringing those old logos back. And this is one of those ones that holds a special place in the hearts of many. So be prepared. I will be there. I plan to August the 15th. August 15th. Let me look up and see what day that is. Today's Friday. August the 15th is going to be Tuesday. So Tuesday at noon, you can go by and get the brand new Vintage Vault merch. That's going to be shirts, hoodies, glassware, anything they can slap a logo on. There's a good chance you're going to be able to find it that day. So if you're in town and you want to be the first among your circle of friends, show up at Campus Bookmart at noon on Tuesday, August 15th at noon. If you can't make the town, visit them on the World Wide Web at campusbookmart.net. And by being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays. That is BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. That'll get you free shipping on all orders over $75. Any order less than 75 bones, absolutely incomplete. All right, working through our SEC football previews. Today is South Carolina. We'll wrap up our SEC previews next week, and we'll have a couple of weeks left, and we'll break down our non-conference opponents. The next thing you know, it'll be game week. Think about that for a second. We're 3 weeks away. Next week, last week of SEC opponents. SEC teams, excuse me. Then we'll have 4 non-conference opponents to talk about. So that gets you through the next week. And we'll have 1 left. And next thing you know, we're previewing week 1. We'll probably save Southeastern Louisiana for that week. Preview that, kind of get that done. But the reality of it is we don't have a lot left. But we do play South Carolina this year. That is a Bulldog opponent. And, Shane Beamer, a former Bulldog assistant, big fan of his. A lot of people were very skeptical when Ray Tanner hired him. We're like, what? And look at what Shane and those guys have done. Way ahead of schedule. I really thought last year they were going to have a tough year. I'm not too proud to admit that. I thought, you know what? They had the really good year the year before. I thought they won't sneak up on anybody this year. And some people are going to get them. And that really wasn't the case. I mean, that 2021 season, you look back in hindsight, they went 6-6 and snuck into a bowl game and then won the bowl game against North Carolina running away from it. Absolutely insanity. And that big win over Florida and Dan Mullen that year really highlighted the season. So they get bowl eligible in year 1. Come back last year. Again, No way you're sneaking up on anybody. And there were some up and down. I mean, but they were an 8-4 team, and you remember they wanted to play, Notre Dame in the bowl game, wanted that helmet sticker win, didn't get it. But let's go back and kind of recap how the year went for South Carolina. They get Georgia State 35-14. The next week they get beat pretty well in Fayetteville, 44-30, to drop to 1-1. And then Georgia gets them 48-7, and then we're thinking, okay, here we go. All right. Got a couple non-conference games. They'll run through these. It's going to be tough to make a bowl game. Well, they blast Charlotte 56-20, and then they get South Carolina State 50-10. You're like, okay, well, that's expected. Well, then they get Kentucky and Lexington. Now, if you remember, this, to be fair, in this game, Will Levis was beat up. That's what people forget. Will Levis was beat up in this ball game. South Carolina made some good things happen for themselves. It was 7-7 at the break, and South Carolina got some separation there in the third quarter to make it 17-7, and just kind of needed to navigate through the fourth quarter, and they match Kentucky with 7 points. But Will Levis didn't play in this ball game, and so South Carolina 6 sacks in the ball game. Kyra Sharon was the starter there. Rodriguez with a big ball game for Kentucky, but he was really all they had that evening. But that was a big win. Regardless of the circumstances, that was a win. I said, you know what? They're probably going to get bowl eligible now. And you think, okay, well, they've won 3 in a row. Surely A&M will turn this thing around. A&M goes to Columbia, South Carolina, and comes home with a loss. Now you're thinking, man, look at what's happened in South Carolina. These guys are already stacking it up for you. And then they host Missouri as a top 25 team for the first time in forever. And they lose. Can't stand prosperity. And lose 23-10 in a game that really wasn't that competitive. The next week, they get Vanderbilt 38-27. They get shelled in Gainesville 38-6. And you think, okay, well, this is it. They'll probably lose out. And I projected that on this show. And what do? They absolutely destroy the University of Tennessee. Tennessee had a chance to make a playoff and got absolutely embarrassed. This ended all that for them, 63-38. Did you expect that? I didn't. I was like, okay, there's no way they win back-to-back top 10 games. And they do. They beat Clemson 31-30 in a very entertaining game. I thought Clemson's quarterback play was really spotty and give South Carolina defense a lot of credit. Then they take on Notre Dame in a ball game and lose 45-38 in Jacksonville. But, it's a good game. But they end the year with an 8-5 record. And so, again, you kind of build on, the year before. And so now some people are like, hey, this South Carolina team will be pretty decent this year. I'm glad we get them early. But this team is only going to go as far as Spencer Rattler can take them. And I think everybody sees that and say, but Steve, isn't that the case with every quarterback? Yes, it is. But Spencer Rattler is a guy that has some really dynamic qualities, and at times he can take over a ball game. And again, for us, this is that same mobile-type quarterback that has given us some trouble. This is a big game for us. I've told you guys before, I think this game is the difference between a good year and a great year. I think it's that simple. It's that important for us. We'll see what happens. Juice Wells, obviously, pretty big-time player there too. So, new offensive coordinator. And we go through this. And again, it only applies to Mississippi State. Mississippi State is always docked 2 wins in the preseason for changing a coordinator. Nobody else has that. Nobody else has that. Running game, that's going to be interesting. Very interesting. Offensive lines having to be rebuilt. That's where I think, this is where it helps us to get them early before they kind of develop some cohesion with that unit. We can go out there and really change some things with the angles and the frequency in which we blitz. But it's going to be interesting, to say the least. They've added Trey Knox, of course, from Arkansas. He'll be a tight end with them. We'll see. Juju McDowell is back, but it wasn't like he was a 1,000-yard rusher. Just had just over 200 yards last year. And so some of that, too, is Spencer Rattler. Is he learning to play within the frame of the offense? Is he getting the ball in the hands of playmakers? Is he trying to do it all himself? I don't know. But the reality of it is there were times last year Spencer Rattler, like especially against Tennessee and Clemson, really kind of played above his head. And so that's what you concern yourself with. Offensive line, again, has got to be rebuilt. They had a pretty significant injury in the spring to left tackle out there. So, again, glad we're getting them early. Defense, secondary-wise, really, really good, but not so good against the run at all. So a lot of times, too, those numbers are kind of skewed, right? Because you only threw when you had to. You didn't throw necessarily when you wanted to. Just line up and run the football game. And secondary-wise, they should be pretty good. They return a lot of guys back there. But the reality of it is this is a team that really struggles to stop the run. We'll see our friend Stone Blanton there. Had a good season last year. Could be a starter. You know, he'll be jacked and ready to play that game. I don't know how many of our players will remember that he talked about being a part of this program. And, still kind of disappointed with the way that worked out. But, wish him the best, just not against us. But this is a team, again, going to be tough for them to run the football when it's not, kind of a backyard football play. That's the thing you look at. Not a lot of depth at running back and a rebuilt offensive line. Going to put a lot of pressure on Spencer Rattler. And listen, he's good enough to carry him some places, don't get me wrong. And then you look at a defense that struggles to stop the run. What happens when they have to walk those safeties up there? Do you take a shot, And so, I think, again, this is a team that will get better as the year moves forward. But I think they're pretty much what they are. I think they're a 7-5, 8-4 type team. And, again, us having to go on the road to play in the Southeastern Conference is always, always, always a dicey proposition no matter where we go. And to go to Williams-Brice Stadium, it's going to be jacked. The fans are going to be there and they'll be ready to roll. And it's going to be one of those deals where, we don't know what time the game is yet, but we're going to have to show up ready to play. They're not going to lay down and give it to us. But this is, again, you're basically playing one of your contemporaries here in a venue you don't see very often. So we're going to go out there and do some big things. There's not really any question about that. This is a extremely important game on our schedule. Let's work through their schedule. They open up in Charlotte on neutral field against North Carolina. Now, that could be interesting. North Carolina, one of the better teams in the ACC the last decade or so. So let's say if we had to call it today, let's call that a loss for the Gamecocks. Well, the next week you get the Furman Paladins. That's a W. Then you travel to Athens, Georgia. That's a loss, and it could be a very physical loss. That's your CBS game on September 16th. Well, you know who comes to call in the next week? It's Mississippi State. And so we have a really good chance to play a 1-2 South Carolina team after a very physical bloodletting against the two-time defending national champions. I like where we sit in the schedule. The next week, they got to travel to Tennessee. We are sandwiched in there perfectly. Perfectly. It's the lone home game between two games against top 10 opponents. I like our chances. I do. Not just because of the matchup. And again, we'll preview this as we get closer. But just as the ball lies today, I like it. I like us going up there winning the ball game. And so now all of a sudden you start thinking, you lose to South Carolina, you beat Furman, and you put together a 3-game losing streak. Goodness gracious, right? Is Beamer Ball going to be in trouble? No, obviously not this year. But I think there'll be some people off the bandwagon. This is a brutal schedule. I mean, it honestly is. Not just kind of like the Ole Miss thing, not just because of who you play, but when you play them. Let's say you're 1-3 after playing Mississippi State, and you lose Tennessee, you're 1-4. Well, your reward from that is you go and host Florida, who will be desperate too. And who knows what kind of shape Spencer Rattler is in at that point. The good thing is they get the bye week before their ball game. Then you got to travel to Missouri, a team that beat you handily last year. Then you go to College Station, which is a weird cross-sectional permanent opponent for them. And then you get Jacksonville State. Then you get Vanderbilt at home, and you get Kentucky, and then you close out against Clemson. And so we start counting this. You start looking at the back end of the schedule and say, yeah, there's probably some wins there, but what kind of shape is that team going to be in when they get there? Now, I know last year Shane surprised me. He's an extremely intelligent guy. He's a great football coach. They'll be well coached. I just think there are too many question marks about this team. And when you look at the schedule, I think 7-5 is really, really optimistic, to be quite honest with you. Let's count it down together. We're going to call North Carolina a loss. Now, I won't be surprised if South Carolina wins, and that's going to be September the 2nd. After we beat Southeastern Louisiana, we can come home and watch that game on ABC. It'll be interesting to see how this game shakes out. It's a toss-up game, but I'm going to go with North Carolina. It may feel differently once we get there. They'll beat Furman 1-1. They'll lose at Georgia 1-2. And again, I'm going to go ahead and give Mississippi State a win here, make it 1-3. They're going to lose at Tennessee 1-4. I think Shane rights a ship. It sounds kind of crazy after the bye week, and I think Florida's going to be desperate. And I think Billy Napier is probably on the hot seat at this point. Shane's not. I'm going to call South Carolina an upset here. And they're 2-4. They go to Missouri. I'm not sold on that Missouri group, and I think it's a good matchup because of the fact Missouri has good receivers. South Carolina expected to have a good secondary. Let's call South Carolina a win here. So now you get 3. All right, can you get bowl eligible? Well, you got to go to College Station. I'm going to go to College Station. I'm going to go with Texas A&M. So you're not getting the dub there. Then you get Jacksonville State. That's a dub. Should be, right? There's your 4th win. You host Vanderbilt. I think that's the 5th win, and I think South Carolina will have to beat Kentucky to get bowl eligible. And just because of the fact that I think Shane is a guy that has gotten better down the stretch each year, I'm going to give them a dub here and lose to Clemson. So I think that's a 6-6 year. If they find a way to beat Mississippi State or win one of the toss-up games, they could be a 7-5 team. I think they take a step back this year. And it's not just because of the fact I think people have to take them more seriously. I think the fact when you look at this team, there are too many question marks in a very physical line of scrimmage league. They're not going to be able to run the football with authority, and they're going to struggle to stop the run. And when you can get 3, 4, 5 yards to carry, why would you ever pass? Right? And then not to mention you got a rebuilt offensive line that struggles run blocking. All of a sudden you get behind the chains. Teams are going to turn the dogs loose on you, and there could be some wear and tear on your quarterback. I think it's going to be a step back this year. Again, probably a bowl team, but probably ends up, Liberty or somewhere like that. That's how I see it today. Now, of course, over the totality of the season, things change because who knew last year South Carolina would play Kentucky without Will Levis and ultimately get a W? You never knew that. And we picked it at the beginning of the year. We said, yeah, Kentucky will win this game. So you never know from one week to the next what's going to happen. But again, I think Shane Beamer's going to be fine there if they leave him alone. I think Shane's also a guy, too, that is a great motivator and evaluator and developer of talent. I think he surrounded himself with good coaching. But I do think this year is a step back. All right, let's get ready to get out of here. But before we go, let me remind you, too, if you hadn't done so, go to whenthebottomfalls.com. People all the time say, Steve, how can we support you? Well, there are a multitude of ways of doing that. But buying the books is always great. Subscribing to the website, genespage.com, the Mississippi State affiliate for 247 Sports. But go to whenthebottomfalls.com. If you or anybody you know has been impacted by addiction or alcoholism or anything like that at all, or maybe you just want to hear a good underdog story or hear a story of redemption, go read that. If you're looking for sports books, and it's amazing, like I travel around and see bookstores and they'll have like a book or two or whatever, and they say, oh, we've sold these and sold that. There are more books out there to be had. The sports books are all available at that same URL, whenthebottomfalls.com. You can get Flim Flam, Dogpile, Stark Villains, and Alpha Dogs right there. Bloomsville Leander, of course, available to Amazon for a limited time only. That's about to expire. But be sure and check that out. And again, Stark Villains gear available at starkvillains.com. But please pre-order the book, and it's finished up. Everything's in the can now, and so we'll have a release date on the print. Once they get it all in and get it set and everything else, they'll send the date to the publisher and they'll relay that to me. But it's been running about 5 weeks. And so if everything is on track, that means we're probably looking late September, which is what we've talked about now for several weeks. So pre-order and you'll get it then. And I know some people just want to come say hello, but there are other people that live around the country. And so I just encourage you, please buy the book. All right. So let's take a look at this Chris Lemonis thing. Had a chance to speak with Chris earlier today. Talked about the portal. How are you going to utilize these guys, right? Nate Lamb is a guy, obviously, that the first guy in the portal before we even had a pitching coach. And you think, well, what? He was smart to jump on that, But you also think, too, Lemonis is kind of saddling the pitching coach with a guy that maybe he didn't pick out. I think when you got a left-hander that's 6'4", 6'5", that's throwing mid-90s, I don't think there's a pitching coach in the country who'd be like, nah, I don't want him. Left-handers are hard to find, especially guys that throw with big velo, and he does. Now, the question is going to be, what kind of adjustment does he have to make to go from Division II to the Southeastern Conference? I think it's pretty significant. But, you look at Ole Miss last year, similar scenario. And I don't think we expect to make Nate Lamb a weekend starter. I think he's probably a matchup guy, middle reliever. One of those guys, too, like, maybe you start Gerangelo as a right-hander, and then after he gets you through the order 3 times, you need somebody to bridge the gap to the back end, and they can go in there and chew up those left-handers. I mean, that makes sense to me. But I like it as a piece. And again, I said then he wasn't being forecast as a weekend starter, but he is a guy that we expect to pitch on weekends. All right, in addition to that, you had Carson Ligon. And one of the things that Chris shared, too, I think is interesting, is beginning of the year, he was a different pitcher. He was a Friday night guy at Miami. And it's amazing, like some of our people just they think he's scratch and dent. He's really not. He was a guy that had some shoulder stiffness this year, came back a little bit too quick, wasn't quite the same. Now he's had plenty of time to rest. He tells me he's back to 100%. He's ready to roll. I'm eager to see what Justin Parker can do with him, because Carson Ligon, from his own admission, says he's never, ever worked with anything analytical. He's never had anybody work with him to say, hey, you change this grip a little bit, change this release point a little bit, and then we're going to get greater RPMs and get greater sync. So it's all brand new to him. And again, this is a guy that was an established weekend starter in a pro baseball conference, the ACC, a very, very big baseball conference over there. And so there is some reason for optimism there when you begin to think about that. It's like he's going to have more technology available to him to fine-tune his game than he's ever had at any point in his career. And out of high school, everybody in the country wanted this guy. In the portal, nearly everybody in the country wanted this guy. It's incredible to think about. Sometimes we focus so much on what we didn't get, and we forget about what we did get. And I think Carson Ligon's a guy that can really help us. Could he be your Friday night guy? He certainly has that kind of potential. It's going to depend on what he does this fall, and I'm eager to see him pitch. Our Cal Stevens, a guy we've talked about regularly on the show out of Purdue. A guy, again, that a lot of connections around him. But this is another guy, too, that has played summer ball with Bryce Young last summer, played with Hunter Hines this year. They both gave the Bulldog stamp of approval and said, yeah, this is a big-time guy. Let's go get him. Probably a Saturday or Sunday guy for us. And that's the thing you start thinking about, another guy that led a Power 5 program, even though it was a losing season last year, in nearly every statistical category as a pitcher. Had 14 starts last year. 12 of them were really good. A couple of them were absolutely outstanding, and 2 of them were forgettable. Just about every pitcher in the country is going to have, not named Paul Skeens, is going to have at least 1 or 2 outings a year that you look at and say, you know what, that was an absolute clunker. But we get so caught up in all that stuff and sometimes don't look at the context. But, again, this is a guy, too, that kind of fit us culturally from a farming community up in Indiana. Really liked Justin Parker. We had a lot of coaches that had connections to him. So this is a good get. And, again, anytime that you can bring in 2 Power 5 weekend starters to your program, you got to do it. You got to do it. Now, are these guys bona fide Friday night guys? That remains to be seen. But both of those guys have thrown on Friday nights. They just hadn't done it in this league. So we'll see. But again, I think it's important to understand, did we get better pitching-wise? We absolutely did. We went out and got one of the best pitching coaches in America, and then we went out and added 2 Power 5 starters to the weekend. That competition will only make everybody around them better. And then you see Nate Lamb as a guy that's an interesting piece. Johnny Long, of course, your catcher. And Chris said that was one of the more difficult things, is kind of working through that. Because everybody that goes in the portal wants to play. And Johnny Long will get a chance to play. Maybe he's your midweek catcher. Maybe he catches the front end of a doubleheader. I don't know. But this is a guy, too, that everybody you talk to talks about how good he is in the clubhouse, what a great teammate he is. But he's a guy who can play a little bit too, And so it's a difficult deal when you've got a guy like Ross Highfield, who is a future big leaguer, as your starting catcher. And how do you go out there and tell some, junior or senior guy, hey, come here and play for us? You got a good chance to compete when you see Ross Highfield sitting there. So it took a special approach. It took a special player to agree to this arrangement. Of course, Jackson Owens here. So now we got 3 of these catchers in town now, and then I guess the 4th one just showed up too. Former Tulane commit Spalletta. But you feel good about that piece of it now. You went from having 4 scholarship catchers to 1. Now you're back to 4. In addition to that, of course, Logan Kohler, and he is a guy that we kind of sat on that story for a long time, and I was didn't want to do too much to kind of shine a light on it, but I started a thread weeks before he committed. It said this is a situation we're monitoring, and I just put a link to a tweet where he hit a home run against Ole Miss, and just kind of sharing that, with people. This is a deal he had to navigate through some academic stuff to ensure that he was going to be a graduate transfer and to be able to get things done to facilitate the transfer, because he's already utilized his one-time transfer. This will be his 3rd school. But he is a guy, too, that as other people around this conference have said, one of the things they like about Logan Kohler is this is a guy that's going to make the routine play. This is a guy that's going to go out there and grind out at bats, guy that's got some pop in the bat, probably a 10 home run guy, maybe a 30, 35, 40 RBI guy, kind of depending on what happens in front of him. But a lot of people in baseball around this league have said, Mississippi State needed a break at third base. They got a really solid contributor in Logan Kohler. I tend to agree. And I'm eager to see what he looks like on the diamond. It's like, how many times last year did you see a ball hit to the left side and you just held your breath? Wouldn't it be nice not to have to do that? It's like your pitcher goes up there and grinds through in the bat and rolls up a ground ball, and then we let it go through our legs, or we can't field it, or we throw it away. Wouldn't it be nice to have a guy over there that could make the play? Maybe he's not Mike Schmidt or Brooks Robinson, but he's a guy that can just simply make the play. Make the routine play, make a simple play. That's one of the things I tell you about baseball. If you can just make the routine play, you're going to win, probably 60% of the time. Just make the routine play. We couldn't make the routine play. The glaring loss here, the miss, obviously, is the Friday night deal. We didn't go get a bona fide Friday night guy. And again, talking to people around the league, there was only about a half dozen of those guys in the portal. And our record the last 2 years is part of that deal. And you got to think Justin Parker, of course, kind of working from behind when he got here, because it took some time for us to get him hired. And so it's tough to build those relationships so quickly. So we were kind of fighting from behind. That was a factor with some guys. I still think Luke Holman's one of those things. It just kind of made sense for him to come here. It didn't work out. He's headed to LSU, so now we got to deal with him. And as great as Braden Montgomery is, I think that's the bigger loss for us, is losing Luke Holman. So that on the board even before all this began to unfold. Luke Holman is a big-time player. Is he Paul Skeens? No, he's not. But that's a guy, too, you go out there because of his maturity and his demeanor. You feel like I can put him out there on Friday. He's going to eat up, give me 6-7 innings, and probably leave with a lead or at least a game in hand, or at least within reach. Braden Montgomery, in many respects, was a guy I think probably – Mississippi State fans, if we'd got Braden Montgomery, people would probably already be planning to host a regional and perhaps a super. That's how significant it was. But did we have to have an outfielder? No. Would I have liked to have had one? Yes. Did I want it to be Braden Montgomery? You better believe it. Didn't work out. But the reality of it is now we know who our team is, and we're going to start baseball practice on Wednesday. Yeah, that's how quick it's happening. Fall baseball is already here. So it's interesting, too. You navigate through the end of the season, and you're immediately having to go to work on portal recruiting, and that changes daily, right? Because there's new names that flow through every day, and you got to break down film. You got to see if you got connections. Then you got to navigate through the draft, in addition to recruiting your own players from going in the portal. And you got to hope that your signees come to school and that your other players won't sign a bad deal to leave. And then now all that's done, and we're in camp, right? I mean, that's how quickly it all happens. And before you know it, man, think about this. You're 6 months away from college baseball. The good thing is we got football to kind of eat up that time for us, right? And we need some things to cheer about. The wife and I talked about that a couple times this last couple days. She goes, it feels like forever since we've played anything. And it does. We need something to feel good about. And I think it's time now, kind of give baseball a break, let those guys work a little bit. We'll do some updates, monthly. Just kind of check in, see how guys are doing. We're going to cover the scrimmages. But I think this fan base needs some things to celebrate. I think there's a little baseball fatigue right now because we love it so much and we're so frustrated we haven't got the return on the investment emotionally and financially, right? So let's kind of put the pause on that for a little bit. Let's kind of, as they say, let's put a pin in that and let's focus on football. I think we got a chance to have a really good year. As you guys are well aware, I'm very optimistic about the staff, not just this year and beyond. I think next year is going to be a challenging year. But we got a very advantageous schedule, and my hope is as we work through some of these SEC football previews like we did today with South Carolina, I think you begin to realize, hey, there's some pretty good matchups out there for us. And, of course, things change week to week due to the health of your team. But I think people are going to realize as we get into this season, I don't think people are really prepared for what Mississippi State's going to do. And we got to take care of the football. We got to stay healthy. But we got a very experienced roster. We got 8 games at home. And you guys are, again, showing, as we talked about the first segment of the show, you guys are going to show up. And there are going to be a lot of people that come into Davis Wade Stadium are going to be thinking, we're playing Mississippi State, and the ground is going to swallow them whole. Because Arnett and Matt Brock are going to be blitzing from the locker room, and every time there's a big play, you guys are going to ring this cacophonous, if that's a word, rage down upon them. It's a very difficult place to play, especially when we get a lead. And we're going to get the chance to do that 8 times this year. And we'll see how things go. But I think it's important for people to understand this is a football team that's capable of some really good things. And so when I see the 6-6 and 7-5 prognostications from some of our own fans, I like to think those are made out of ignorance or perhaps insecurity. Because I'm telling you, this is a team that's capable of much more than that. And I think that you're going to see that as we get into it. All right, that's going to do it for today. Again, sorry it's so late, but it is summertime, and I'm navigating through a lot of things right now. I look forward to just being able to do the Jeans Page Boneyard job for a while, to be quite honest with you. The books things are done. We'll do some book signings during the holidays, do some game day signings and things like that. But the reality of it is my responsibilities for that writing process are done. We're finished with that. And so I can kind of move that away. And then, of course, this thing with the wife's True Rest franchise, we're starting to kind of get that in the hands of some other people. So we're kind of pushing some things toward the middle of the table, and she'll be home, perhaps for good, in about 6 weeks or so. I mean, we're back and forth right now. We're making it work, but the reality of it is, I'm so looking forward to football season, and I know you guys are as well. And we got to cover everything, but I tell you this. As we get closer to game day, my mood gets better. Honestly. And I don't know that I can say that about, as much as I love baseball. I mean, there are times, especially when we're not doing well, it's like, I got to go back out here again. I love it, man. But, man, oh, my gosh. Football's completely different. And, we get bigger crowds. We get more people in town. And I'll be honest with you, when Friday mornings when I'm riding around or Friday afternoon going to get lunch and all of a sudden the town begins to fill up, it does something to my mental health. And I'm like, man, my people are here, right? My fans are here, right? My Bulldogs are here. That's how I feel. Like, as you guys show up and other people around town like, oh, the traffic, I love it. I do all my shopping, so I don't have to go to Walmart on the weekends, right? But I love when you guys come because you bring so much energy to town because we're all going to be at the same place, celebrating the same thing, cheering for the same team. That's exciting to me, and I'm so grateful that Zach Arnett's first season, ticket sales are going as well as they are, and really tip of the cap to Mike Ritchie and his crew and marketing and everybody else. But it's not just enough to buy the tickets. We need you to show up and come be a part of this. And it's so good to talk about football, and it's so good to know it's that close. 3 weeks from Saturday, we're going to gather at Davis Wade Stadium. It's going to be hot. Go ahead and start hydrating now. And we're going to go out there and we're going to get the season off on the right foot. Until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.